What's up, guys? Today we're going to be updating the Zombie World deck profile. It's been quite a few months since I've updated this deck profile in general, but there is a new card that has come out that I think actually shakes up the deck quite a bit. It's called Hela, the Generaider Boss of Doom. This card is actually really good in the deck. Basically, it lets you tribute either a Generator card, which it is, or a Zombie card, which it also is, on the field to target a zombie monster in grave, and then special summon it, which is really good for this deck because that is actually a quick effect. So it actually keeps like zombie monsters in rotation, and that's really good for stuff like Necro Banshee that you can send to graveyard really quickly in order to get a zombie world out of nowhere. There's actually quite a few combos. I'll just go over the combos now. Like let's say you have zombie world on field, and your opponent activates Twin Twisters to destroy the zombie world. You can activate Hela, Generator Boss of Doom, tribute it to special summon a Necro World Banshee from the graveyard, and now the zombie world is protected. So that's a pretty cool combo right there. On top of that, let's say you have the Hela Generator Boss of Doom on the field, and you have something like a Doom King. Like let's say your opponent says, alright, end phase, you activate this, tribute this, bring any zombie, doesn't matter what zombie, from the graveyard, special summon it, and then during the standby phase you're going to bring this back for free anyway, which is really good. And then the third really cool combo that I've liked with this card is, like, let's say you have Doom King in grave, and you have Hela, and you have Zombie World. You go end phase, your opponent, during the standby phase, you activate during your opponent's standby phase the Doom King to special summon it back. Your opponent immediately activates Call by the Grave, which is a really great counter to this deck. So you can chain link to activate Hela, tribute Hela for cost, and then target the Doom King to special summon it. So you basically dodge the Call by the Grave just like that. So I think this card is actually really good, and it adds a lot of interesting lines of plays to the deck. So yeah, I just wanted to preface that before we even got into anything, because that is sort of the new card that I've been messing around with this deck, and it's actually very good. It's seen, I would say, some positive results for me, but I definitely hope to mess around with it a little bit more. It's a really good card, and if you don't already know this, you can actually special summon it off of Glow Up Bloom because it fits the appropriate criteria to be special summoned off of Glow Up Bloom. And this, of course, is very easy to get into the graveyard. So it's just another target other than Doom King to be summoned off of Glow Up Bloom. But let's get to the deck profile. That was a quick little explanation there. First of all, we play 3 copies of Shiranui Solitaire. This card, basically, you tribute to special summon a tuner from your deck, zombie tuner with 0 defense, which will typically be either Unizombie or Glow Up Bloom, which I'll get to in a second. Basically, the Unizombie lets you increase a monster on the field by 1 level, and then you can send a zombie monster from deck, and also for the rest of the turn only zombies can attack, but that doesn't matter because you have Zombie World and it makes everything zombies anyway. And that's the first effect. Second effect, you can discard a card to increase a monster's level by 1. If you're doing tuner plays, this actually matters, or XYZ plays, but for the most part this actually does not matter in terms of the level gaining if the majority of your deck is link based. But if you are playing more synchros and stuff like that, then definitely it actually has a serious impact. But the main thing is just to discard stuff for free. That's like the main point of that effect. It's just to discard and send from deck. It's actually a really good card in zombies. Then we play 2 copies of Glow Up Bloom. This card is absolutely awesome. Basically, when it hits the graveyard, as soon as it hits the graveyard, you can banish it for cost and special summon I think it's a level 5 or higher zombie monster from your deck if you have a Zombie World on field. If you don't have a Zombie World on field, then you add it to the hand. So it's really cool, and it's a tuner. It also gets around Call by the Grave, and it gets around stuff like... It gets around Call by the Grave and DD Crow because it banishes itself for cost as soon as it hits the graveyard, which is really cool. And then, to continue, we play our boss monster of the deck, which is Doom King. Basically, whenever a zombie activates its effect in the graveyard, or in graveyard or face up on the field, you can negate or banish a monster on the field or graveyard, which is really awesome. Every single time you get to do that. It is a hard once per turn, but you can use each of those effects in a turn. So you can both negate in a turn and banish a monster on the field or graveyard at any time. And actually, it's not when they activate. It's just when a zombie monster activates its effect anywhere, so it actually doesn't matter if it activates in the graveyard or on the field. But yeah, it's pretty cool for that. But it's a really nice control card. And then its main effect is if there's a card in the field spell area, you can special summon this back during the graveyard during every standby phase. And it doesn't actually have to be a zombie world. It can be any field card. So it can actually, like if you're playing against Orcus, you can bring it back. If you're playing against Sky Strikers, you can bring it back. If they have a field spell, you can bring this card back. It's insane because you can just keep getting it for free over and over and over. And with Hela, she lets you tribute it and then, special summon it again the next turn. It's like an endless free resource. It's one of the most broken cards. Then we've got the Hela, which I talked about at the beginning. Basically, it's like a quick effect Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon. It's really helpful for the deck because it lets you special summon during your opponent's turn, lets you kind of loop zombies. So it's really cool for that. Then we play 2 copies of the Necroworld Banshee. This card basically, when it's on the field, it just protects zombie worlds from being destroyed. And then if it's sent to graveyard, or if it's on the field or it's in the graveyard, quick effect, you can banish it and then activate a zombie world directly from deck. So it can't even be ashed because it activates directly from the deck. And of course, it is a quick effect. So if your opponent, like let's say you, not only is it a quick effect, but it also banishes itself for cost, which is really awesome. So Call by the Grave really has no impact on this card because, like, let's say it's in the graveyard and your opponent targets it with Call by the Grave, you just banish it and then get the zombie world, which is really cool. Or if you activate it first and it banishes itself for cost, so your opponent can't Call by the Grave anyway. The only thing they can really Call by the Grave in this deck is the Doom King, and that's one of the more serious problems. Then we've got, this is quite an interesting card, Pain Painter. Basically, this card lets you target up to 2 zombie monsters on the field, and those monsters become level 2. It's also a tuner, which is, mildly relevant, and it's also Plague Spreader Zombie Ball face up on the field. I'll talk about more why this is played in the deck as we get into the extra deck, but basically it lets you make any zombie monster on the field level 2. And that's also additionally relevant because we are playing the danger, so any of those monsters, once Zombie World is on the field, will become level 2. Then we play 2 copies of Mizuki. I'm not playing Gozuki in this deck, but you are free to do that. I just think this is a little bit better for Pain Painter and the other cards we have. Then we've got 3 copies of Ash Blossom Joyous Spring. It's the best hand trap in general, it's the best hand trap, because it just hits the majority of decks, but on top of that, it's also a zombie, so when you activate it, you can trigger Doom King and then banish your opponent's monster, which is a beautiful amount of synergy. But yeah, this card is really good. And if it had 0 defense, we could possibly summon it off of Shiranui Solitaire, but it doesn't, it has 1800. Then we play the danger. We play 2 Nessies. We play 2 Mothman, might bump this up to 3. We play 2 Jackalope and 2 Dangerous Tsushinoko. These are basically just free summons that let you discard stuff out of your hand. Sometimes you get awkward hands with this deck. It's not often. This deck is really consistent at doing what you want it to do. But once in a blue you get an awkward hand and maybe you draw too many monsters. It's really good to be able to just use one of the dangers and sort of pound it out. And the dangers are really good because you can go into larger link monsters, stuff like Appaloosa. And it fills the field with random monsters, so it keeps a lot of cards alive, which is really good. But it's really good for link plays. So that is all of the monsters in our main deck. Then we play, of course, 3 copies of Zombie World. You don't mind hard drawing this, and at the same time, you don't mind, getting it off of the Necro Banshee. It's always good regardless. Then we play 3 copies of Super Polymerization. This card's just insane in this deck because if you don't know, there is actually a monster that requires two zombie monsters, which is really good because you activate Zombie World, you make everything zombies, and then you activate Super Poly, and you can use any monster basically on the field to get anything you want. And it's non-targeting removal that your opponent can't respond to, which is completely bananas. And so if they have like an Appaloosa, and basically, like, if they have like an Appaloosa and like a Winda, for example, let's say they're playing against Orcus, they have Appaloosa, Winda, you can just activate Zombie World, they can't do anything about it. Then you activate Super Poly, and they still can't do anything about it, and then you just you get rid of all of their negates and all of their nonsense in one play. And then of course you can, because you have zombie, you can always do something with that monster that you summon from the extra deck. You can link it away. You'll always have plays. It's no big deal. It doesn't clog anything. And then we play 3 copies of Instant Fusion. We play... I don't particularly like Call by the Grave for this deck. I much prefer to play the Instant Fusion because it gives you more versatility, and it gives you a body on board, and it gives you this monster, which is Millennium Eyes Restrict. It basically does exactly what Call by the Grave does, except you have to link it off at some point. So basically what you do with this is you just leave it there, you finish all of your plays, and then you link it off into a Linkariba or something like that. Or you link it off into a Vampire Sucker once you get 2 zombies on field. But basically it's basically Call by the Grave on legs, and it gives you a free monster. That's why I heavily prefer to Call by the Grave. And soon with Master Rule 5 coming out, we're actually going to be able to keep that on the field without having to link it away. It's going to be even a much better card. Then we play 1 copy of Reasoning. There are so many different levels in this deck that you're not really concerned about. Like, your opponent, there's no way they're going to hit whatever they think is going to hit. There's literally so many different levels. There's like level 3s and level 4s and level 7s and level 2s and level 8s and level 9s. There's literally so many different levels in this deck. There is no way that they're going to guess it correctly. And even if they do guess it correctly, it actually benefits you because you want to mill stuff to the graveyard anyway. So this card is like built for this deck. We play 1 card destruction. I'm kind of on the fence about this because in this meta it actually helps your opponent quite a bit. But, you know, if there was anything I would take out, it's probably this. 1 Foolish Burial and 1 Monster Reborn, which I just love in this deck. But that is all of the spell cards and all of the monster cards. That is the main deck. And now I can sort of go into why I play the Pain Painter and when I get to it. We go to extra deck, which is 1 Draco Necro Nether Soul Dragon, basically 2 zombies. Its effect is like mildly relevant, like summons a token, which is like decent, but then your opponent doesn't take battle from this card. It's a little bit weird, but it's basically it's just a way to get rid of stuff and then have a monster with 3,000 attack. Then we play 1 Diplexer Chimera. This is for the Salamangreat matchup. The Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, any dark deck. We're now in the, hold on there. We'll go to this. This is both a Super Poly target and an Instant Fusion target. So for Super Poly, obviously it's 2 monsters with the same attribute, different types, which is, you know, decent against certain decks. But what it serves double versatility because it's also an Instant Fusion target. So when you use this with Instant Fusion, you just summon this to the field, and let's say your opponent has like cards that target, you can call let's say you call like Dark, and the majority of the zombies in your deck are Dark. You call Dark, and now your opponent can't target any Dark monsters with card effects at all. So now your monsters can't be impermanents, and they can't be... It can be it can still be Ghost Ogre. It can't be targeted, so it can't be impermanence or like Effect Veiler, or it can't be like Widow Anchored or anything like that. So all of your dark monsters are basically safe, which is really cool. And actually, your opponent can't target their own cards with those effects either. And this is a quick effect, which is really cool. And that can actually help against certain matchups where they have to target their own cards. So yeah, it's definitely a very interesting card. Then we've got the Millennium Eyes Restrict. This is basically it blocks hand traps. You summon it through Instant Fusion. Then you have Thousand Eyes Restrict. This is another card you summon through Instant Fusion. This is why I like Instant Fusion more. It has more versatility than Call by the Grave. Because Call by the Grave, I swear to you, going second is like completely pointless. Because they already have so many interruptions and negates that, like, what purpose is it really going to play going second? So... the Instant Fusion lets you go into stuff like this where you can steal your opponent's monsters, which is really beneficial. Then we play 1 Reaper on the Nightmare. This is an awesome card. It basically is another Instant Fusion target. When this card attacks, this card can attack directly. When it does attack directly, you can discard a card from your opponent, which is really cool. And basically, you can just bring it back with Instant Fusion. It's a generic zombie that you can use for any purpose, because none of the other targets that we have were zombies, but this is a zombie, and it's really good for that. Then we play 1 really, really interesting card, Mannequin Cat. So that's the reason I play Pain Painter. I play Pain Painter. It makes any zombies on the field level 2, so you can do any of the dangers and it'll make any of them level 2, which is really cool. But basically, you make, as long as you have this and any other zombie, which is every card, like I said, in your deck because of Zombie World, you can summon this, which is just a rank 2. This card is absolutely nuts. So basically, once per turn, you can detach a card, and then you can special summon a monster from your opponent's graveyard. That's effect number 1. The second effect, and this effect is completely insane. If a monster special summoned to your opponent's field, so you can force it to happen, or your opponent can do it on their own, except during the damage step, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls, and then summon one monster with the same type or attribute from your deck. So basically, because you're playing Zombie World, all cards on the field are zombies. And since all cards on the field are zombies, you can basically summon any of your zombies during your opponent's turn or during your turn. Every single time they special summon, you get a free zombie. Which makes this card insane, because you can summon stuff like Hela. You can summon stuff like Doom King Balderok. You can summon stuff like... Where is it? Hold on. Where did she go? I don't know where she went. Necro World Banshee to protect your zombie world. But you can basically summon stuff like this at any point during your opponent's turn. Quick effect, which is really, really cool. And then, like I said, you can force it to happen. And then what else is cool about this card is that it actually has incredible synergy with Vampire Sucker, because they both have an effect when a monster is special summoned from the graveyard to the field. So, like, let's say your opponent has, like, an Ash Blossom, right? Let's say your opponent ashed you, they have an Ash Blossom in the graveyard. They activate Ash, they have the Ash engrave. You manage to summon Vampire Sucker and the Mannequin Cat. You activate the effect of Vampire Sucker to special summon their Ash Blossom back to the field. You now get to both draw a card and special summon any zombie monster from your deck. So it has really, really good synergy with that card, and just in general, it's a really sick card in this deck, because it's almost... Like, in general, this card is decent, but because of the circumstance where it changes the type of all of the monsters on the field, it creates a situation where you're always going to summon something every single turn, multiple turns over the course of a duel, and your opponent really won't catch up an advantage, because it just gives you so much advantage so quickly. And with all of the dangers and stuff, it's very easy to get the Pain Painter almost every single time. It's very consistent, and you have all of the Mizukis, and the Saryuja, and that I'm going to show you in a second. And you have just so many cards that will help you, and Mizuki, just to special summon Pain Painter so easily that this is just incredibly consistent. Alright, then for the Link monster, we play one Vampire Sucker, play one Link Karibo. This is just for random Link plays. One Avenged Savior. This is a going second Link 2 zombie. It's just very good. It lets you send... During damage calculation, it lets you send a zombie to the graveyard. It's actually pretty decent for going second, because you can send like Hela, or you can send our boy Doom King, and then this card gives it. I'm pretty sure, yeah. This card your opponent's monster loses attack equal to the level of that monster, and then of course, because it got sent to the graveyard, you can bring it back to in the next standby phase. Then we play the Masquerena. And finally, our Link 4s, which are going to be the Appaloosa, because this deck summons so many monsters, this particular variant with all of the dangers. We play one Saryuja, just to fix hands. It both fixes hands, and it helps you get into Pain Painter. You basically summon Saryuja, you draw, you get into Pain Painter, you shuffle back whatever you don't need, and then it gives you an extra special summon. You can summon this, literally any other zombie, it doesn't matter what it is. Let's just say this. Overlay, turn it into a level 2 overlay, summon the Mannequin Cat, and now you have basically endless summons as long as your opponent keeps special summoning. They just keep digging a deeper hole for themselves. It's really cool for that. Then we play our last Link monsters, which is the Mech Knight Crusadia Avermax. You basically either make it off the IP, or you can just make it off of anything. We play a lot of... I noticed when I was like playtesting, I'm like, hold on a second, we play a lot of Link 2s in this deck. And we play a lot of monsters in the extra deck, so this card is actually really easy to summon, because you can just use like a Vampire Sucker and an Avenged Savior or something like that. It's very easy, and don't forget, you can use stuff like Mizuki and Zombie and Monster Reborn and stuff like that to bring back like bigger like Avenged Saviors and Vampire Suckers from the graveyard. You can bring any of these cards back from the graveyard, which is kind of insane. just off of the effect of, what's his name, Mizuki. But that is basically it. Yeah, I hope you enjoy this deck. I might build a more control-based deck if you guys want to see something like that. Like a more control-based zombie world deck, like more trap cards, stuff like that. This one is a lot more aggressive. It sets up a pretty nice board going first because it can make the Mannequin Cat and basically give you endless interruptions. And then you've got the Hela, which is a really good card. But yeah, if you want like a more control-based variant of the deck, just let me know. I'll make it. More like, you know, stuff like Shiranui Swallow Slash and Rivalry of the Warlords and stuff like that. Let me know and I'll throw that one together for you guys. But thank you for watching.